Good morning. We're back. Let's finally finish up this set review. This has taken a lot longer than I expected it to, but hey, first time for everything. Lots of learning, lots of working out what the problems are. No one's actually here yet, so hey, I get to just do this if I want. Let's make some funny faces for... Oh, there's someone here! You're not showing up on my viewer count. What is going on? I will make some funny faces for, I don't know, video stills or something. Interesting. Well, I guess we sit and wait to see how long it takes for that to tick up to a viewer. Maybe you don't count. Maybe the internet hates you. Whatever. I'll deal with that in a bit. Let's get this show on the road. Maybe I shouldn't have gone straight to full speed. Aha! We have a viewer. How exciting. Right. Multicolored, let's go! Alania, Divergent Storm. 3 blue-red for a 3/5 legendary otter wizard. Whenever you cast a spell, if it's the first instant, first sorcery, or first otter other than Alania you've cast this turn, you may have target opponent draw a card. If you do copy that spell, you may choose new targets for the copy. This is one wordy lady. Right. You cast a spell. If it is the first... If you have not cast an instant, sorcery, or otter this turn, you may have your opponent draw a card. If you do, copy the spell you have cast. Is giving your opponent a card to copy a spell worth it? Maybe. Is my internet being really dodgy? Apparently. This card is very weird. If you want to play Otter Kindred, go ahead, she's hilarious. Pity there's so few otters. If you're playing some sort of spell slinger nonsense and can find some good gibberish for her to do there, then go ahead. I don't think she's quite good enough for my spell slinger build, but it's kind of close, and if I wasn't deliberately being as creature-like as I possibly could, then she probably would make it. She's a very funny little person. Right. Let's move on. Balin the Haymaker. This card is terrifying. Balin the Haymaker. Red, green, white. For a legendary rabbit warrior, it's a 4/3 with tap 2 untapped tokens you control. Add a mana of any color. Tap 3 untapped tokens you control. Draw a card. Tap 4 untapped tokens you control. Put 3 counters on Balin. It gains trample until end of turn. So, obviously very happily at home in a Naya tokens deck. There's so much flexibility on what you do here. Need more ramp? Your tokens are your ramp. Need more card draw? Your tokens are your card draw. None of these actually require you to get rid of anything. Need to win the game? Just put a million counters on Balin, it gains trample, commander damage the heck out of your opponents. My opponent played this against me in a pre-release. I was so glad that they did not have any tokens on the battlefield at the time, and was desperate to get rid of it the whole time it sat there. The threat of activation on any of those abilities is terrifying. It's so easy to make swarms of tokens in basically any format in any format in modern Magic. Tokens are easy to generate. The only downside this card has is it doesn't have protection, but it's so cheap that it's basically irrelevant. And if your opponent kills it during one of your main phases, you can just float a pile of mana in response, and then just recast it again. Dumb card. Beware the bunny beatdowns. This is going to come for your face. I should be trying to go a little bit faster than I am. Let's just get into the flow of things a bit. Bria, Riptide Rogue. So this is the face card of one of the starter decks, I believe. 2 blue-red for a 3/3 Otter Rogue. For some reason, the Rogue has prowess. Other creatures you control have prowess. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. I can see that my display for the treadmill keeps disconnecting. I have no idea why. Not really anything I can do about it. We'll just have to live with it flickering in and out. My internet has been a little bit juddery recently, and this is probably just part of that. Alas, oh well. October we can get better internet. Betterer internets. Bria, the Riptide Rogue. Do you like slinging spells? Do you like having creatures that... Yeah. I don't know why the internet is so bad recently. It may be something that we need to contact the provider about. It's been kind of dodgy for a while. But thinking about it, there was an OpenReach van messing around near the end of the street last Tuesday, maybe? I think I saw it when I was going out. So... Sure. Anyway, Bria. Play spells that make tokens. Then play more spells that make more tokens. Your tokens get bigger because this gives them prowess. And then your opponents can't block your big creatures, and then you kill them. Easy. Also, it's an adorable little surfboarding otter. What's not to like? Beauregard Mentor. Green-white, rabbit soldier. Power and toughness equals the number of creatures you control and trample. Trample on this is enormous. Just go wide, make a pile of dudes, and then just smash. People have been trying to make previous rabbit that got bigger based on power work already. Let me see if I can find in Eldraine, right? Type rabbit, search, that. Yeah, the Regal Bunnycorn. People have been trying to make Regal Bunnycorn do something. Why is this so big? People have been trying to make Regal Bunnycorn do work for a while. This just is Regal Bunny, like slightly smaller because this doesn't count the other permanents, but trample is massive. Like, if you're playing green, white, go wide, then add the Beauregard Mentor, enjoy smacking with a 2-mana 12/12 or whatever. From a 2-mana bunny to a 6-mana bunny. Long ear of the law. A very suspicious bunny. It's a legendary rabbit soldier. It's a 4/4 with vigilance. This, I believe, is the base card of the other half of the starter decks. So we had red, blue otters and green, white bunnies. Right. 6 mana, 4/4 vigilance. When it enters, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. And whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it attacks, double the number of +1/+1 counters on it. I think I may have misread that card the first time when I read it before, because I discounted it, but I think I read it as when Burke attacks, you double the counters on each creature, rather than the creatures having to attack themselves. That makes him a lot better. Whether he's actually good enough for my counters deck, I don't know, but it's a much closer now than it was. But yes, very obviously wants to be in a +1/+1 counters deck. 6 mana is fairly pricey, but it's a 6 mana 4/4 with Vigilance that distributes 2 counters. If you put them on 2 creatures that you already have in play, they can attack this turn and double up their counters already. Could do some work. I will have to reconsider him. Camellia, the Seed Miser. 1 black-green for a 3/3 Squirrel Warlock with Menace. Other squirrels you control have Menace. Whenever you sacrifice 1 or more foods, create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token. Pay 2 mana, forage. Reminder, to forage, you exile 3 cards from your graveyard or sacrifice a food, and you put a +1/+1 counter on each squirrel you control. Now, this is where understanding how you pay and activate abilities is useful. The forage is before the colon, so it's the cost. So you sacrifice your food as part of a cost. That puts a trigger on the stack that makes you a squirrel. You make your squirrel, and then your ability resolves, and you put a +1/+1 counter on each other squirrel, including the one you just made. If you like playing squirrels, this is a very powerful commander for them. Or just very at home in the 99 if you would rather continue to playing Chatterfang or one of the others. Also, that's just quite interesting in the Abzan food decks, like as just a good way to use up your foods or get value out of using them. In fact, is there a way to go? Can you go infinite with this in Peregrine? Peregrine took. If 1 or more tokens are procured under your control, create the token plus an additional food. No. Okay. So this you sacrifice 3 foods to draw a card, but sacrificing 3 foods just gives you 1 squirrel, which gives you 1 food back. So you need another actual sacrifice outlet. But still, that is very close to extraordinarily. It's extraordinarily strong already, because you sacrifice a food with these 2 in play, you get a squirrel and a food. Then you sacrifice the food and you get another squirrel and another food. So if you've got a free way to sacrifice your foods, you can have an arbitrarily larger number of squirrels, plus whatever value you're getting from your free sacrificing the foods. Interesting. Cindering Cutthroat. 2 and a hybrid black or red. It's a lizard assassin. It is a 3/2, and it enters with a +1/+1 counter on it if an opponent lost life this turn. So it's a 3 mana 3/2 that can be a 3 mana 4/3, and pay 1 hybrid red black. It gains menace until end of turn. Just a reasonable little lizard. If you're playing some sort of Bloodthirst deck, this is just another card to throw into Bloodthirst. The stats aren't amazing, but they're also not horrible. Menace is quite a powerful ability. Paying for it is a little bit meh, but come on, just play this for the amazing flavor text. We don't play with fire. It is strictly business. Great line. Red continuing to have a stranglehold on the best flavor texts in the business. Clement, the Worrywart. I don't know why I started talking like this. I just decided that was how. Clement. 1 green blue for a 3/3 legendary frog druid with vigilance. Whenever Clement, the Worrywart, or another creature you control enters, return up to 1 target creature you control with lesser mana value to its owner's hand. Frogs you control have tap, add green or blue, spend only to cast a creature spell. If you want a slightly clunky green-blue blink effect, this is good. If you want to play green-blue frogs, this is great. If you're already playing Grown-Up, this is an excellent inclusion. That second ability is complicated, because you need to have the mana to replay the thing that you're bouncing, but you're also just setting up huge loops of value. Doesn't work very well with X spells, because when the creature enters, its mana value just resets to, say, X and green, so it's just a 1. Easy to bounce back, but you're not bouncing anything big with it. So you're looking to just chains legitimately up. If you've got other cost reduction effects, though, oh, that's a play. Oh, you can do some nasty things with this in Animar, I think. Just the creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each counter on Animar. You can then cast your really big things for cheap, and then pick up something slightly smaller, replay it. Interesting. Anyway, if your opponent's doing this, be afraid, they may be up to something really quite unpleasant. Corpseberry Cultivator. 1 and double hybrid black-green. It's a 2/3 squirrel warlock. I've just realized I was going to say Golgari for its mana value and then decided that wasn't helpful. But a whole new generation of Magic players are going to be joining, and their understanding of colour identity is going to be creatures. Beautiful. What sort of deck do you like playing? Oh, I like playing otter-coloured spells. Do you have any otters in the deck? No, I just like the colour combination. I play Squirrel Graveyard. Do you even have squirrels in the deck? Not anymore, but that's what they started as. Anyway, Corpseberry Cultivator. 1 hybrid squirrel. It's a 2/3 squirrel warlock. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may forage. Exile 3 cards from your graveyard or sacrifice food. And when you forage, put a +1/+1 counter on Corpseberry Cultivator. In the right deck, this can get very, very big. Note that it's when you forage, not when you sacrifice a food, so you have to be building things that have the word forage in their rules text. Forage by any other name does not count. Sorry, Shakespeare. Dreamdew Entrancer. 2 green-blue for a 3/4 frog wizard with reach. When it enters, tap a creature, put 2 stun counters on it. If you control that creature, draw 2 cards. So, 4 mana 3/4 with reach, very reasonable. When it enters, lock down an opponent's card for 3 turns, or lock down one of your cards for 3 turns and draw 2 cards. If you've got something really dorky, great. If you need to lock out your opponent out for a while, great. This card, I may have overlooked it when I was originally scanning through the set. The more I read this, the more interesting it becomes to me. Like, locking down something that I'm not using to draw 2 cards is quite good. And locking down something your opponent controls is also very reasonable. Commentary wife, would you play this in Perry? You put 3 stun counters on something you're not using, draw 2 cards, and then you have stun counters as a new counter type for parry to trigger. Interesting. Anyway, Phineas, Ace Archer. It's a green-white 2/2 legendary rabbit archer. Phineas has Vigilance, Reach, and whenever he attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control that's a token or a rabbit. Then, if creatures you control have total power 10 or greater, draw a card. So, go wide with a billion tokens, attack with Phineas, pump all of your other tokens and rabbits, draw a card. That's a lot of value for a 2/2 mana 2/2, but the downside is you're having to attack with a 2 mana 2/2. And he doesn't pump himself, he puts it on each other rabbit. High upside, but quite risky. Getting an attack out of him should be pretty straightforward. Getting 2 attacks is going to be a real challenge, I think. Fireglass Mentor. Black and a red for a 2/1 Lizard Warlock. At the beginning of your second main phase, if an opponent lost life this turn... Okay, so, beginning of your second main phase, if an opponent lost life this turn, exile the top 2 cards of your library, choose 1, until end of turn you may play that card. So, post-combat, haha, I hit you! Look at the top 2, keep 1, ditch the other, you may play this one until end of turn. I don't know about Commander, but I might do some very silly things with this in Standard. Like, this is a Warlock, which means it's a Mercenary, which means we can play it in... Is it Bile Smasher? Bile Smasher, Gleeful Grenadier says, hello, I am interested in just ripping through my deck at high speed. So, in fact, even in Commander, this isn't horrible. Like, turn 2, you play Bile Smasher. Turn 3, even if you haven't been able to attack, you play this pre-combat, ping someone for 1, second main phase, impulse one of the top 2 cards of your library, get another Outlaw, cast that, repeat, repeat, repeat. There's a lot of card advantage in there. That's very bad. Stop. Bad Mystic Commentary. You are not building more red-black decks. Stop. We're trying to cut down on the amount of red-black. We want to play a different color combination. Stop getting excited by the little lizards. But the little lizards are so cute. Like this guy. Look at him. Gev Scaled Scorch. Black-red legendary lizard mercenary 3/2. Ward, pay 2 life. Other creatures you control enter with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each opponent who lost life this turn. Whenever you cast a lizard spell, Gev Scaled Scorch deals 1 damage to target opponent. You play him, and then you play the other lizard, and then that was a cast trigger. So when it enters the battlefield, it will enter with a +1/+1 counter. And if your opponent tries to kill Gev, they still get pain. Whatever. I'm probably going to build this in Brawl. I will almost certainly play it in Standard. This is going to be very funny as a commander. Again, Gev, Mercenary, still an Outlaw, still works in Bile Smasher. They just really love these dorky 2-mana Outlaws. I mean, to be fair, in the story, Gev is a bit of a prat. He hangs out with Hugs, they are apparently friends, former comrades in arms. Hugs is the stoic, silent type. Gev expresses his attempts to handle his trauma by never stopping talking about it. He is a bit of a gob, but the card is amazing. Glob. Hail King Glob. General Nuisance. Glob Calamity's Augur. Black, green, blue for a frog wizard noble. Interesting. So, we've got three colours, black, green and blue. Green is frog, blue is wizard, black is noble. For some reason I find that incredibly satisfying. He's a 2/4 with Death Touch. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play lands and cast spells mana value 4 or greater from the top of your library, and you can tap him to Surveil 2. Yes, yes, he's good in Commander. Yes, yes, everyone's going to play him with Karuga. We all know about this, it's all very boring. Yes, Surveil 2 on a tap ability can probably set up some dumb things. But it's Glob. He's a dumb aristocrat who tries to destroy, cause carnage to the entire plane just because he thinks he has a good plan. He is the reason for the entirety of the story. He stole Maha's egg, seeking to raise it, hatch it, raise it, have the new Calamity Beast bond him, then he can control it, and use that to dominate. He is a bad man. Not a man, he is a bad frog. He also taught Helga everything she doesn't know about magic. Head of the Homestead. 3 green white for a 3/2 rabbit citizen. When it enters, make 2/1/1 white rabbit creature tokens. If you're playing rabbit, play this. If you want to go wide, this isn't the worst card ever printed for making multiple bodies. That's about all I've got to say really. It's a very basic common. Helga, the Skittish Seer. We do not like Glob, we stand Helga, that is all. Let's do a proper card review then. Helga, Skittish Seer. Green, white, blue. Whenever you cast a Frog Druid, 1/3. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 4 or later, you draw a card, gain a life and put a counter on Helga. Tap, add X mana of any one colour where X is Helga the Skittish Seer's power. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells with mana value 4 or greater, or creature spells with X in their mana cost. So, starts off as a little frog. If you play big things, she learns from them and gets better and better at casting magic, which allows you to play even more and better, bigger things. There's almost certainly a way to go infinite with her, given how much mana she can generate, and she's just a massive card advantage engine. It's a good thing she's adorable, because otherwise she may become one of the most hated commanders in the game. She is that strong. There is... Someone's going to do some really dumb stuff and just build her as an affinity deck or something. Whatever. Play the frog, have fun with the frog. Just don't be surprised if everyone you play against gets really tired after you accidentally draw 20 cards in a turn. Pugs! Pugs, Grizzly Guardian. X, red, green, legendary Badger Warrior. 5/5 with Trample. When he enters, exile the top X cards of the library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. So, at base is a 4 mana 5/5 Trample. Very reasonable. Later on, just sink as much mana as you feel like into him, and just get access to a whole heap of new cards later in the game. Not necessarily someone you want as a commander, perhaps, because the payoffs on that diminish pretty rapidly, but A lot of red-green decks are going to want him, especially those that do big mana. Like basically every Omnath deck from 2 up to 5 color is going to consider running him. Like Windgrace will. Playing an additional land on each of your turns already is very strong rules text. We've seen it before. We've been scared of it every time. The mana cost is a little bit hard. But honestly, you're not upset if you're not casting him on turn 4, because casting him on turn 6 as a 5/5 trample, draw 2 cards is already also very, very good. I know, it's hugs. Give him 1. He's not as angry as he looks. And look, you can tell that from the flavor text. Most of his scars tell tales. A few tell jokes. Let us just take a moment to appreciate this art, because this little raccoon is going hard. Junkblade Bruiser. 3 hybrid raccoon, hybrid raccoon. Is this going to be too much of a thing? Am I doing this too hard? Let me know. 3 hybrid raccoon, hybrid raccoon. Creature, Raccoon Berserker. 4/5 trample. When you expend 4, it gets +2/+1 until end of turn. So, play this. Next turn, cast a 4 or more mana spell. You have a 6/6 trampler that turn. It is fine. A 4/5 trampler is already okay. If you're playing a deck that cares about that sort of thing, then go for it. Like, what more do you want me to say? It's a common. There's a limit to how far we can push this. Okay, fine. What is the name of the card? But it's the new thing. This mana color combination is Raccoon now. Rule is old. Like, we haven't been back to Ravnica since like 3 months. 6 months, whatever. My point stands. Creature with trample. Let's add an S to that to see if that helps. Creatures with trample, what's the one I'm looking for? There is a thing that I am looking for, and I cannot remember the name. Quartzwood Crasher is a... Like, these Ikoria cards, Proud Wild Wanderer and Quartzwood Crasher, are both interesting things to go along with this, but you are not creatures trample yet. What is his name? Not Dommarina. Am I going mad? There's definitely a legend that cares about creatures having trample. Maybe I should actually filter by legendary. I think it's a centaur, but I'm not certain. No. Oh, that shouldn't matter. Okay, legendary. Let's just get rid of this. There we go. We found our boy, Seton. Seton's the one I was trying to remember. Not Seton. Stonebrow. Why am I saying... What is wrong with me? Stonebrow. Tetan is a different centaur from the same unit, same region in lore. This is a time spiral. Oh, never mind. Stonebrow, Crozan hero. Has trample. Whenever a creature you control with trample attacks, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If you're desperate for more mediocre tramplers for Stonebrow, Junkblade Bruiser. Man, that took a long time. Let's move on. Castrel, the Wind-Crested. 3 white blue legendary Bird Scout. It's a 4/5 with flying, and whenever one or more birds you control deal combat damage to a player, choose one. Put a bird from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield with a finality counter. Put a +1/+1 counter on each bird you control, and draw a card. Now, this was in the main set, but this is really written as a commander card, because you send a bird at each opponent, and for each player a bird dealt combat damage to, you may choose one. So you can dump 2 birds and then put +1/+1 counters on all of them, because you resolve the card in order. Draw a card at the bottom is a little bit irritating because it means you can't draw into a bird and then put it into play, but they probably did that deliberately to stop you doing that, because otherwise this would be even more bonkers. Still, this is one of the better bird commanders we've seen. Have lots of fun. People, remember to pack your flying hate, or you will be bird murdered. Yes, it's choose one, but it's whenever one or more birds you control deal combat damage to a player. So if you have multiple players you can deal combat damage to, then you get to pick for each player. That's why I said it's a commander card. Lily Splash Mentor. 2 green-blue for a 4/4 frog druid. It has reach. 1 green-blue, exile another type creature control, return it to the battlefield under its own control with +1/+1 counter only as a sorcery. Do you like Spant Blink decks, or green-blue Blink decks, or any other Blink decks you can play this in? Then play this. 3 mana to blink something is very strong. Only sorcery kind of sucks, but it's still probably worth it. Lunar Convocation. 1 and a black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, if if you gained life this turn, each opponent loses 1 life. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained and lost life this turn, create a 1/1 black creature token with flying. And 1 and a black, pay 2 life, draw a card. So 1 and a black, pay 2 life, draw a card is already very reasonable. We've seen it on cards like Erebos. It's slightly more expensive than Greed, but you're also getting a payoff for actually using this because you pay the life and then you get a little back later. Like, difficult, you have to have something else going on to actually gain you the life, but you're in white-black. If you can't work out a way to reliably gain life in white-black, then I don't think I can help you. Going to be pushing for Commentary Wife to run this in Oloro, because that covers the first line automatically, and then she can just sit there drawing additional cards and churning out an army of bats to keep her alive. Mabel! It's a little housewife. Mousewife? House mouse? Gone off on adventures to save her children from the threat of the Calamity Beasts, wielding the ancient sword Cragflame that's been sitting in her attic for literally generations. 1 red-white for a legendary mouse soldier 3/3. Other mice get +1/+1. When Mabel, heir to Cragflame, enters, create Cragflame, a legendary colorless equipment artifact token with equips creature gets +1/+1 vigilance, trample, and haste, and equips for 2. She is very scary, not because of her abilities, but because of the sword she leaves behind. My opponent played this against me in the pre-release. It took a lot of work to get past that sword. +1/+1 Vigilance, Trample and Haste meant everything he played just came in and started swinging at me, and then was still available for blocking. Anyway, Mabel, great character in the story, medium magic card. If you're playing Mouse Tribal, Mouse Kindred, great. If you're playing an equipment deck, she makes a very, very good equipment. You should definitely consider playing her. That sword is strong. And don't view her as a 3/3 mouse for 3 mana. View her as a 3 mana sword that comes with a body along with it. Sorry, Mabel. I love your character. Your card is overshadowed by the thing it brings with it. Mind Drill Assailant. 2 rat hybrid. For a rat warlock, it's a 2/5. With threshold, as long as 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, Mind Drill Assailant gets +3/+0, and for 2 and a hybrid, you can surveil 1. So, it's a 4 mana 2/5, lets you control the top of your deck when you've got spare mana, and then late game is a 5/5. If you're interested in 3 mana for surveilling 1, this is great. If you fill your graveyard very easily, a 4 mana 5/5 isn't the worst thing. It's an interesting little rat. That's about all there is, though. Moonrise Cleric. Wish I'd opened this at the pre-release, would have made my deck even better. But 1 hybrid bat. It's a bat cleric 2/3 with flying, and when it attacks, you gain a life. Very simple, very basic. If you're playing bats, this is very reasonable. Gaining just 1 life on attacking really isn't that impressive. You can probably do better, but is a quite cute little dude. This card, however, Muera, Trash Tactician. 1 red-green, legendary creature, Raccoon Warrior, 2/4. At the beginning of your first main phase, add red or green for each raccoon you control. Whenever you expend 4, gain 3 life. Whenever you expend 8, exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. So, play this. Next turn, add a pile of extra mana based on how many raccoons you have. Spend 4 mana, cast 4 mana of spells, gain 3 life. Cast 8 mana of spells, get 2 more to do next turn. If you can reliably expend 8, this card is incredible. If you have a lot of raccoons, this card is very, very good because it lets you keep doing that. If you can't reliably, if you're not getting much value out of the first or third abilities, this card isn't great. In Commander. In Limited, a 3 mana 2/4 that lets you gain 3 life most turns is ridiculous. Ability costs do not pay for expend, it is casting spells only. If you pay 2 mana for an ability, and then 2 mana for a creature spell, you have not expended. It is only if you spend 4 mana on spells. But it is also not the most coherently worded, and really, you should have just yelled judge! Remind me that that's something I need to talk to them about, because especially at pre-releases, actually having doing an explainer for the mechanics is important. But yeah, Moira, if you're doing 1 and 3 reliably, amazing card. If you're not, it's fine. Plume Creed Mentor. 1 white-blue for a 2/3 bird scout with flying. Whenever this or another creature you control with flying enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control without flying. There's something very interesting about the blue-white focus in this set of we are birds that care about things that aren't birds. It has a very nice community feel to it, but it does make their cohesion a bit difficult, because if you're playing blue-white, you want to be fitting together as many bird synergies as you can, but then you look at your birds and they all go, we don't like other birds, we need non-birds around us. Still, if you're in a counters deck, this isn't terrible. If you're doing some weird nonsense, you can probably get, this is a pretty good, this is going to be a good nonsense card somewhere. Pond Prophet. Hybrid Frog, 1/1 Frog Advisor when it enters draw a card. If you're looking for more card draw options, this is a very solid little thing. It's just Spirited Companion, but harder to cast, but not in mono white. If you're playing Spirited Companion, you may as well throw this in. Ral, Crackling Wit. You know, for someone who is written to be pretty smart, in the story, he does not demonstrate a remarkably impressive grasp of anything. Like, the entire story, he's like, I must not reveal that they are part of a wider multiverse. Oh, by the way, I'm not from around here. That's a dragon. They're from somewhere else. They're basically another world calamity beast. Another world? Don't think about it. Forget I said anything. Anyway, Ral, Crackling Wit. 2 blue-red, legendary planeswalker Ral. 4 loyalty. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a loyalty counter on him. Ridiculous. +1, make a blue-red otter with prowess. -3, draw 3, discard 2. Very reasonable. -10. Draw 3. You get an emblem with instant and sorcery spells you cast have Storm. This card is dumb. Can we all just agree that this card is dumb? You play him, you start storming off, you pause your storm chain, having cast a pile of rituals and other nonsense to -10 him. You continue storming off. Now all of your things that you're playing just to increase your storm have storm themselves. If you ultimate this and don't win, you are beyond help. If you see this across from you, kill it as soon as possible. This must die. He is going to be like, yes, it looks like he needs to get 6 extra loyalty to ultimate every non-creature spell. This card is going to be disgusting. I am very excited to put him into my spell slinger. That's enough about Ral. Go home back to Tomek, see your husband, have a good time. Stop chasing Jace, you psychopath. Sheepglaive Mentor. 1 red-white for a 3/2 mouse soldier with vigilance and haste. And Valiant, whenever it becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. If you're playing something where you can reliably Valiant this card is ridiculous. 3/2 Vigilance Haste is very strong, and even in Commander, 3/2 Vigilance Haste is reasonable. If you can reliably pump this gets absurd fast. Yes, it can only trigger once a turn, but not only your turn. So if you can do it in your turn and your opponent's turns, this could... I just realised there's a pile. All of these mercenary tokens from Outlaws of Thunder Junction are going to be triggering Valiant all over the place in Standard. That's going to be interesting. I wonder if there's a way to really make that work. Never mind, on we go. That's a different channel's problem. Seed Pod Squire. 3 and a bird hybrid for a creature bird scout. It is a 3/3 with flying, and whenever it attacks, target creature without flying gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Same thing I was talking about with the previous bird, except this one is worse. This has to attack to do it, and it only gives a temporary +1/+1. This card, however, 3 white-black for a 3/5 backed warlock, the Starseer Mentor. Flying, a vigilance. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained or lost life this turn, target opponent loses 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. This is a great grinding card. Just gain or lose life. So take game actions, end step, punish your opponent. Target opponent instead of each opponent does weaken it quite a bit, but still, a 5 mana 3/5 flying vigilance just sits and defends great, can chip in very easily, and the flavor text on this is hilarious. Each star is given a name befitting its grandeur. This one is called Orax, the Night Eater. That one is called Blinky. Rest it, poor Blinky the star. Moving on. Stormcatch Mentor. Red blue 1/1 auto wizard, haste, prowess, instants and sorcery spells you cost 1 less to cast. If you're playing any of the joining the long line of we made Goblin Electromancer but better, we have Goblin Electromancer but better. Haste and prowess and spell reduction. This charge is nuts. Just if you're not sure what to cut Goblin Electromancer, this is so much better. On we go. On we go again. Tempest Angler, 1 hybrid otter for a 2/2 auto wizard. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on it. If you're doing prowess, this is prowess, permanent prowess. Remarkably good card for a common. On we go. Hey Voxy, good to see you. What are you doing on my stream? The infamous Cruel Claw, 1 black-red 3/3 Weasel Mercenary Menace. Whenever the infamous Cruel Claw deals combat damage to a player, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. You may cast that card by discarding a card rather than paying its mana cost. I will be putting this into my Never Stop Punching deck and hoping to hit big spells that I can discard excess lands to. Yes, there are people who want to just run this 98 lands and an Eldrazi Titan or Worldfire. Those people are boring and we shall ignore them. If you see your infamous Cruel Claw as a commander, be mildly concerned that your opponent is an idiot. They are just almost certainly just trying to meme you, because you attack with it, and then you just go Emrakul, cast discard this land from my hand, cast Emrakul. They have no other plan. If you can get rid of Cruel Claw or Emrakul, they don't do anything. Keep up a little bit of interaction and then just ignore them. Or just have 2 blockers. If they're not doing that, and they're just playing a red-black combat damage value stuff town, then that's actually probably going to be scarier. But either way, look at this ridiculously swag dude. Look at that pose, that sword, that smirk. Tidecaller Mentor. No, little otter, like this. See how your rabbit does. Sploosh, not splosh. Tidecaller Mentor, 1 blue-black for a 3/4 rat wizard with menace. When it enters, if 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, Return up to one target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So, early game, 3 mana 3/3 menace. Fine. Late game, 3 mana 3/3 menace, bounce something your opponent has going on. Fine. Very medium card, absolutely fine whatever you're doing with it, but nothing very exciting. But the art is nice. It's a wizard, so if you're doing wizard kindred stuff, this might be worth considering. It's not horrible. Veteran Guard Mouse. 3 and a hybrid mouse. It is a 3/4 mouse soldier. Whenever it becomes the target of a spell or ability for the first time each turn, it gets +1/+0, first strike, and scry 1. A 4/4 first strike scry 1 every turn. If you can reliably trigger Valiant, that's a 4/4 first strike scry 1 every turn. That's actually very strong. If you can't reliably trigger the Valiant, it's a 4 mana 3/4, which is terrible. Choose wisely. Vine Reap Mentor. Black, green, squirrel druid, 3/2. When it enters or dies, create a food. This is a very, very simple magic card, and yet remarkably effective. 2 mana 3/2, very reasonable. Enters or dies making food, gives you a large amount of value, especially if you can start recurring this card. Have fun, you silly, silly people. Ah, Vren the Relentless. Hang on, let me drink. I need to hydrate. There we go. Right. Vren the Relentless. 2 blue, black, 3/4, legendary rat rogue. Ward 2. And then we get to the really complicated bits. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. Important, it isn't exiling when it dies, it stops dying entirely. So, things like this will not make a food token when it leaves the battlefield. At the beginning of each end step, make X 1/1 black rat creature tokens with this creature gets +1/+1 for each other rat you control, where X is the number of creatures your opponents control that are exiled this way. So, you kill a couple of your opponent's things in your turn. End step, so say you kill 2 things. End step, you make 2 rats. Those rats each get +1/+1 for each other rat you control. Currently Vren and their one friend. Then it's your opponent's turn. For some reason they attack you, you trade off with both of your rats. Now, alright, creatures your opponent controlled. So, they attack you, you kill with 2 3/3s, you trade with both of your 3/3 rats. 2 more of their creatures have died. In that end step, not died. 2 more of your opponent's creatures have exiled. So, you make, in their end step, you make 2 more rats. What shenanigans can we do? Board wipes that leave you with 1 creature remaining. You play Vren, you board wipe, you choose to keep Vren. Everything goes away. You make a huge pile of rats. Important to note, it doesn't care about how the things were exiled. So if your opponent is playing a blink deck and exiles all their stuff, then you get to make a rat for everything that they've blinked. I think this card is going to be underappreciated until you suddenly realize that your opponent has 20 20/20s and you're not quite sure when that happened. Wondertail Mentor. Red, green, 2/2, Raccoon Bard, add red or green. When you expend 4, put a +1/+1 counter on it. This is a very reasonable mana dork. 2 mana, 2 color mana dorks are very acceptable everywhere, and this one, over the course of the game, will eventually get big enough that it does relevant things, even if you no longer need to mana generate from it. If you're playing red-green and you want another creature ramp, this is an excellent place to go. Igra, Eater of All. 3 black-green, legendary elemental cat, 6/6, ward, sacrifice a food. Other creatures are food artifacts in addition to their other types and have 2 tap, sacrifice this permanent, you gain 3 life. Whenever food is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put 2 counters on Igra, Eater of All. Yes, all of your opponent's all other creatures are now food artifacts, so you play this, you play something that destroys all artifacts. Great, congratulations, you did the very simple thing. All of your creatures are food, so anything that triggers off sacrificing food, congratulations, you can now sacrifice your creatures to forage. Igra is a dumb card with a massive built-in engine that will go infinite with a ham sandwich. This card is pushed beyond belief, disgustingly powerful, and I've seen people posting on Twitter about them managing to go infinite because their opponent has Igra, and that turned and then suddenly it enabled a pile of synergies with it in their own deck. This card is nonsense. If you're playing it, have fun, do your degenerate ridiculousness. I don't know, man. What is it? The flavour of this card is hilarious. It's the Eater of All. It turns everything into food so it can eat them. I feel like it should have had instead of its last effect, it should have had some sort of tap, destroy, target food or something. Whatever, card is bonkers good. Zoraline. I had this in my pool. I only managed to play her once, and she felt amazing. Zoraline the Cosmos Caller. 1 white-black 3/3 legendary bat cleric. Flying, vigilance. Whenever a bat you control is attacked, gain a life. When she enters or attacks, you may pay white-black and 2 life. When you do, return target non-land permanent mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Hey look, it's Sun Titan in the command zone. Do I need to say more than Sun Titan in the command zone? Come on, that's a ridiculously powerful thing. Yes, you have to pay mana for it. Oh well, whatever. Play her on curve. Go back Kindred, just start swinging in for a pile of life. Or don't play her on curve. Play her later so that you've got enough to pay the cost as soon as she enters. You just grind, then play your commander, rebuy the best thing. Doesn't have to be creatures. Any non-land permanent mana value 3 or less. Enjoy the silly little bat. Do cute bat kindred things. Do degenerate graveyard recursion things. I really don't care. Just have a good time. Right. Made it through multicolored. Breathe. Okay. This should be a much faster thing. Okay, let's go. Sparkform Harvester, 3 mana, 2/3 changeling with reach. Put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. If you're playing Grenzo, we know what to do with this. Two mana, put the bottom card of your library into your graveyard. If it's a creature with power less than or equal to Grenzo's power, put it on the battlefield. So, your thing dies. You pay 2 mana, put it from the graveyard on the bottom of your library. You play 2 mana to Grenzo, you play it back into the battlefield. We've seen this before, it's fine. This is a changeling, so it can go in much more places. It's also same nonsense with River Song. Put the card you want to draw on the bottom of your library, then draw it from the bottom of your library with River. We've seen this effect before, it's just another one. Changeling is cute. Putting things on the bottom of your library isn't good unless you're being degenerate with it, or have a lot of shuffle effects. but that ability on a 3-mana body is one of the cheaper we've seen it, so enjoy that, I guess. No. I want to get this finished, dear commentary wife. Besides, artifacts and lands shouldn't take long. Bumbleflower's Sharepot. 2-mana artifact enters, make a food, sack it, destroy something only as a sorcery. 2 artifacts for 2 mana is okay, but 5 mana to blow something up only as a sorcery is very clunky. If you're into just every cheap artifact that makes more material, this is fine, but that's about it. Fountain Port Bell. This is better than I think it looks. Fountain Port Bell, 1 mana artifact. When it enters, search the library for a basic land, reveal it, shuffle, put that card on top. 1, tap 1, sack this, draw a card. So, at worst, it's 2 mana, put a basic land into your hand. If you have much more time, this is 1, put it on, shoot it for a basic land, and then later draw a card. It is a very reasonable little artifact, 1 mana. It's also just a 1 mana artifact, so anything you've got where you just need more 1 mana artifacts, this is another one for you. Heck, you can play this and then sacrifice it to draw a card before you tutored the land to the top if you want. This isn't amazing, it is just a common after all, but I think it is a very reasonable role player in the right deck. Don't sleep on this. Heirloom Epic. Can we just appreciate this art? The Beatrix Potterness of this shit? This... Look at this! I have one complaint. There are only 2 mouse babies, but this card wants you to have 4 mouse babies. Anyway, Heirloom Epic, 1 mana, artifact. Pay 4 and tap this, draw a card. For each mana in this ability's activation cost, you may tap an untapped creature you control rather than pay that mana, only as a sorcery. So, either 4 mana and tap, or tap your 4 little mouse babies, or tap any combination of tapping mana and mouse babies. Do not have to be mouse babies, that's just what's in the art of this card. If you're playing Go Wide, a 1 mana artifact that you can tap to draw a card each turn is absolutely absurd. If you're not going wide, this becomes worse, but honestly, if you can reliably tap 2 creatures and pay 2 mana, this isn't horrible. Patchwork Banner. 3 mana artifact. When it enters, choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. Tap, add a mana of any color. It's an anthem and a mana rock. It's 3 mana. If you're heavily kindred, this is great. If you're not kindred, don't bother. Short Bow. This card did a lot of work for me in the pre-release. 2 mana equipment, a 1 to equip. Equipped creature gets +1 vigilance and reach. +1/+1 and vigilance for a 1 mana equip is very, very good. If you are equipment decks, consider this. If you are Voltron, vigilance on your commander is good, consider this. This is not an amazing card. You may well decide that you already have better, but if you aren't at least considering this, then you may be making a mistake. Starforged Sword. 4 mana for an equipment that you can gift a tapped fish. When it enters, if the gift was promised, attach it to target creature you control. Equipped creature gets +3/+3 and loses flying, and equips for 3. It's a very silly card. It's just a great big chunking lump of metal. It's too heavy to carry while flying, but if you hit someone with it, it hurts. I don't entirely get the flavour of giving a fish to have it enter equipped, but wizards do what wizards do. I don't know that that's particularly relevant, it's more just a balance thing. Form runner equipment you can have the option to equip for free, isn't terrible. Sword of Vengeance, that's a reprint, we've talked about this before. Tangle Tumbler, what happens if you put a pile of raccoons in a root ball? It's a 3 mana 6/6 vehicle with vigilance. Pay 3 mana and tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and tap 2 untapped tokens you control to have it become an artifact creature until end of turn. So you pay this. Next turn, you tap 2 tokens. Do not have to be creature tokens, importantly. Just 2 tokens. This becomes a 6/6 vigilance. You attack with it. Then you pay 3 mana to put a counter on this. Now it's a 7/7. That is the worst thing. It just does more silly things from there. 3 mana and tap to put a +1/+1 counter isn't a great value for that, but a 3/3/6/6 vigilance vehicle is a very reasonable thing already, so it doesn't matter too much that the counter cost is quite high. The 3/3 mascot, 2 mana changeling, 2/1 mana, pay 1, add a mana of any colour, only once each turn. That mana filtering ability saved me so much in the pre-release, it's not even funny, and a 2 mana changeling is very, very reasonable if you're looking for Kindred payoffs. If you're in a colour heavy Kindred deck, this is a really great card. Reprint land, reprint land, reprint, print. Oops, Fountain Port, you're new. A colourless land. 2 and tap, sack a token, draw a card. 3 and tap, pay a life, make a fish. Do +1/+1 counters drop off the vehicle once it's no longer a creature? No, they do not. +1/+1 counters can go on any permanent type and will just stay there. +1/+1 counters just don't do anything unless they're on a creature. But there's no issue with them being on a non-creature. Otherwise the Ozolith wouldn't work. In Mountain Port. Fountain Port. Land. Not legendary, importantly. Add a colourless. Or 2 tap, sack a token, draw a card. Or 3 tap, pay a life, make a fish. Or 4 tap, make a treasure. If you like doing dirtly trading post things, hey look, now we have trading posts on our land. Make chump blockers, very slowly make extra mana, moderately cheaply draw extra cards, whatever you want, go ahead and do it. Best in a token decks where you don't have to spend just generating fish or treasures, but it just sits there, and if you draw nothing for the turn, then you can just start doing value things with this. None of these are sorcery speeds, so you can just drop out chump blockers when you need them. Interesting card, probably being slightly overhyped at the moment. The abilities are expensive to use, but it's a very decent utility land if you're not colour heavy. Doesn't enter tapped, important on both the Fountain Port and Hidden Grotto. Land. When it enters, surveil 1, tap, add a colourless, or 1 tap, add a mana of any colour. When it enters surveil 1 is very good. Being a colourless land that costs quite a lot that costs an extra mana to filter into a colour is pretty bad. If you're desperate for that sort of surveil effect, then great, but this is Wizards continuing to try and find how much benefit they need to give to these filtering lands to make them playable. I don't think this is it. Island. Lilypad Village. Add a colourless, or add a blue only to cast a creature, or pay a blue, surveil 2, only if a bird, frog, otter or rat enter the battlefield under your control this turn. If you are playing birds, frogs, otters or rat kindred, include this card, surveilling 2 late game when you cast creatures is amazing. If you are playing birds, frogs, otters, or rat kindred, this probably does not merit inclusion. Looping Flower Village. Add a colourless, add a white only to cast creature spells. 1 and a white, sacrifice this. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a bat, bird, mouse, or rabbit from among them. Put it in your hand, put the rest on the bottom. Same thing. If you're playing bat, bird, mouse, or rabbit kindred, this might be worth including. The fact that you have to sacrifice this makes it somewhat worse, but it does help you clear top deck. Montin, Mudflat Village. Same thing, add a colourless, add a black only for creatures. 1 and a black, sack this, rebuy a bat, lizard, rat, or squirrel from your graveyard to your hand. Rats and squirrels both have been known to do graveyard shenanigans anyway, and this is better. Like, getting a guaranteed card back from your graveyard is probably better than picking a random card from the top 6, so this is a more reasonable include than Looping Flower is for the white creatures. Again, if you're not running heavily in those 4 creature types, do not use this. Oak Hollow Village is the green version of this effect. Pay a green, tap, put a +1/+1 counter on each frog, rabbit, raccoon, or squirrel you control that enters the battlefield this turn. We've seen this sort of effect before. Like, being able to regularly distribute counters is quite reasonable. If you're in the right kindreds, then include this. If not, then don't. And the red version gives lizards, mice, otters, and raccoons +1/+0 and haste. Giving things haste is powerful. I don't know how much any of these, except for mice, really care about that. Like, with mice particularly, this will trigger Valiant, so this is definitely a reasonable include. Lizards, otters, and raccoons, somewhat worse, although lizards care about your opponents taking damage, so being able to haste them out and get surprise attacks in is reasonable. Once again, if you're not in these kindreds, don't bother. Swamp, reprint land, 3-Tree City. If you like Nixos, Shrine to Nyx and getting mana for your devotion, happy days. Now you can get mana equal to the number of creatures of the chosen type. If you're playing Kindred, hello, this is your friend. If you're not playing Kindred, don't do this, it is a trap. Yes, it's absolutely ridiculous. You can make a trillion mana. If you're in Elves, you can untap this land and make more trillions of mana. We get it. You're going to play this and make a lot of mana, and if you get to do it for more than a couple of turns, you're going to win the game there from it. We know there's no point getting too overhyping this. The card is dumb. Enter tap, choose a colour. Tap, make a mana of the chosen colour. It's much worse than the Thriving Lands, but if you're desperate for colour fixing, it's a good budget option. Hey! We got through all the main set. On to the commanders. This needs to zoom in some. Right. Breathing. Breathe. Breathing. Breathe. Okay. Bellow, Bard of the Brambles. 1 red-green for a 3/3 legendary creature raccoon. I should have said. We are now looking at the unique non-reprint cards from the commander decks. We're not going to look at everything in the commander decks because the pile of the cards are reprints. We are just looking at the new cards for this set. Hello, Bard of the Brambles, 1 red-green for a 3/3 raccoon bard legend. During your turn, non-equipment artifacts and non-aura enchantments with mana 4 or greater are 4/4 elemental creatures in addition to their other types and have indestructible, haste, and when they deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. So, you play this. You play a 4/4 artifact or enchant, 4 mana artifact or enchantment. It's now an indestructible 4/4 with haste, and when it hits someone, you draw a card. So you attack with it. Next turn, you play another one. Now both of them are 4/4s. You swing and attack with them. If you ever wanted to play red-green artifact or enchantment beatdown, this card is hilarious. I want it in my 5-color Enchantress deck because killing people with my enchantments is basically the only way I can win. He's just a little dude that turns everything into giant indestructible beat monsters. I say giant. 4/4s aren't that big, but indestructible means you can feel a lot freer to attack. And of course, all your artifacts and enchantments have their own abilities that you're using anyway. The only downside of this is that it's 2 colors, neither of which are enormously artifact or enchantment centered, but you can get around that, you'll work it out. Or just include him in a deck that's already doing it. On we go. Hazel of the Root Bloom. My wife's least favourite card just because she's really confused that someone other than our cat is called Hazel. Poor commentary wife. Hazel of the Root Bloom is a 2 black-green 3/5 legendary squirrel druid. Tap her, pay 2 life, tap X untapped tokens you control, add X mana in any combination of colours. So, pay 2 life, tap a pile of tokens, make a pile of mana. At the beginning of your end step, create a token that's a copy of target token you control. If the token is a squirrel, instead make 2 tokens that are copies of it. So, green-black token commander wants you to be doing squirrels but doesn't require it. What's the name of the dude? Advanced search. Text. Create. Token. Copy. Must be black and within black or green. Byway. Okay, Byway Floor is already a very funny thing to do with that. But any of these effects, like Bramble Stalker, Coiling Rebirth, that's another good one. Anything where you can make copies of really interesting things and then duplicate those copies, I think is going to be the more powerful thing to do with Hazel. If you can do anything shenanigan-y to make all those things also into squirrels, then go nuts, like Maskwood Nexus, Conspiracy. Must not build black decks. Decks with black I do not want to play more. Stop thinking of shenanigans. This card is a very shenanigan-y card. Please, please, someone do busted things with this so that I can be like, yes, I called this, instead of having to try and do it myself. Miss Bumbleflower. Miss Bumbleflower is 1 green, white, blue for a 1/5 rabbit citizen with vigilance. Whenever you cast a spell, target opponent draws a card. Then you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and that creature gains flying until end of turn. If this is the second time this ability has resolved, you draw 2 cards. So, cast a spell, an opponent draws a card, you make something bigger and give it flying. Then you cast a second spell, your opponent draws a card, you give something else a +1/+1 counter and give it flying, and then you draw 2 cards. Isn't she just delightful? Politics. Politics everywhere. You thought that Miss Bumbleflower was just a happy, friendly thing. No, she has political beliefs like you wouldn't believe. Socialism for everyone. I get a card. You get a card. That gets a counter. That gets flying. Everyone is happy. But mostly me. Zinnia, Valley's Voice. Blue, red, white for a 1/3 bird bard. It has flying. It gets +X+O, where X is the number of other creatures you control with base power 1. Creature spells you cast have offspring for 2. So, every creature you cast has a you can pay 2 to make an additional 1/1 copy of it. That is ridiculous. And then Zinnia gets bigger for every creature you control with base power 1. Important to note, it keeps looking at the base power, so even if you've added counters or stuff to it, the base power will remain the same. Hey, do you like powerful ETB effects? What if you could do more of them? Also, it's in red, which means we have to obligatorily point out the existence of Mana Echoes. A 4-mana enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you may add an amount of colourless equal to another creature you control that share a creature type with it. If you build Jeskai Bird to Kindred, you can very easily pay for all of your offspring costs. Enjoy going bonkers. Arthur, Marigold Knight. 2 blue, red, white for a 4/5 Mouse Knight with haste. When it and at least one other creature attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. Put any creature from among them onto the battlefield tapped and attacking, the rest go on the bottom, and the creature that you put in returns to your hand at the end of combat. So, attack with this 4/5 and a friend, and hit another friend from the top 6 cards of your library, and then buy it back to your hand so you can re-trigger your ETBs later. Very interesting, a bit weird. People have said bad Winota. Yeah, but Winota's busted, so bad Winota is still good. Also, 3 colours gives you much more variety in what you can hit. Enjoy your durdling. Here's a durdle. Mr. Foxglove. 2 green, white, blue for a 3/5 legendary Fox Rogue. Lifelink. When Mr. Foxglove attacks, draw cards equal to the number of cards in defending player's hand, minus the number of cards in your hand. If you didn't draw cards this way, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. So, attack someone. If they have more cards than you, you draw so you have the same number of cards. If they have the same or fewer cards than you get to put a creature into play for free. What would you rather? Would you rather draw a pile, or would you rather dump cheap things into play? Either way, Mr. Foxglove is here to help. He is only a 3/5 lifelink with no protection and no evasion, so there are some risks involved in trying to do shenanigans, but also, if you get to do shenanigans, you're going to get ahead so fast. Just give him unblockable. The Odd Acorn Gang. 3 black-green for a 5/5 legendary Squirrel Warrior with Menace, Trample, and Reach. Squirrels you control have tap, target squirrel gets +2/+2 and gains Trample until end of turn, only as a sorcery. Whenever one or more squirrels you control do combat damage to a player, draw a card. So, Stonking Big Squirrel that can be made even bigger by your other squirrels, or can make your other squirrels bigger, and then when your squirrels hit people, you draw cards. Wants you to be a lot more aggressive than other squirrel decks we've seen, but still quite powerful. Honestly, it feels like this card wants to have Vigilance for some reason, and I'm probably going to get confused that it doesn't every time I see it. But a Menace Trample 5/5 is unpleasant and hard to block, and then when they hit you, you draw cards. And if they need to, and are playing a pile of other squirrels, they can just make this even bigger so it's even harder to block. Wildseer Scouring Moor. 3 red-green for a 6/6 elemental wolf with trample. Enchantment spells you cast from your hand have Cascade. I confess, I find the flavour of this card somewhat confusing, but that if you're playing enchantments, that ability is very strong. I want this in my Enchantress deck. If you're an Enchantress deck that can cover red, you probably want this too. Cascading is dumb. Also, it's just a 5 mana 6/6 trample, so have fun with that. Let's just slow down a little bit. Ooh. Jacked Rabbit. It's 1 white. It is a 1/2 rabbit warrior with Ravenous. This creature enters with X+1/+1 counters on it. If X is 5 or more, draw a card when it enters. And whenever it attacks, make a number of 1/1 white rabbit creature tokens equal to Jacked Rabbit's power. So, play it as a 1/2, attack, make 1/1. Play it for, say, 5 mana, so X is 3, it enters as a 4/5, when it attacks you make 4 1/1s. Play it for 7 mana, it enters as a 6/7, and you draw a card, and when it attacks, you make 6 rabbits. If you're playing a +1/+1 counter deck, or a go-wide deck, this is very, very strong. Also, we can appreciate the silly pun about his weapon, Squash, what it is, and what it does. I don't quite understand why all of their weapons are metal casts of vegetables, but here we go. We have a giant rabbit wielding a metal cast of a tuber, not a tuber, a marrow, and smacking people around the face with it. Murmuration. 4 and a white enchantment. Birds you control get +1/+1 and have vigilance. At the beginning of your end step, for each spell you cast this turn, create a 1/2 bluebird creature token with flying named Stormcrow. I want to like this card, but I feel like it's a bit too slow. Like, for turn, say you cast it on turn 5, at your end step, you get a 2/3 bird. And then next turn, like, it's just how many spells do you have to cast for this enchantment to produce enough birds that you're happy with it? Like, it has to survive to the end step of the turn that you're going off. Like, I really want to like this card. It makes Stormcrows. It effectively has Storm for those Stormcrows. It makes them big enough to actually be relevant. But I just feel like it's like, if it was whenever you cast a spell that create a 1/2 bird, I think it would be better. Like, it wouldn't trigger off itself, but it's just so fragile. I want to like this card, but I just don't think it's good. And that upsets me. Play it in birds anyway. Giving all of your other birds +1/+1 and vigilance is great. But if you're playing it to try and go off with the second ability, I just don't think it's going to work most of the time. Are you ready for the dumbest line of rules text in recent Magic history? With the possible exception of only twice a turn. Perch Protection. 4 white instant. Gift an extra turn. As you may promise an opponent a gift as you cast a spell. If you do, they take an extra turn after this one. Make 4 2/2 blue bird creature tokens with flying. If the gift was promised, all permanents you control phase out, and until your next turn, your life total can't change and you gain protection from everything. Exile this spell. So, 6 mana, make 4 bodies. Or, 6 mana, give an opponent an extra turn, make 4 bodies, and you gain protection from everything, your opponents can't be touched, and you just sit there and watch the madness. Teferi's Protection, this is not, but a 6 mana instant that makes 4 bodies isn't the worst thing ever. It's a very weird card, I honestly don't know how to evaluate it. If you're playing something slow and clunky and your opponent is about to win... Okay, that's an interesting scenario. Okay, so you're here. The person on this side is just about to go off. You give an extra turn to that person to help them have the resources to kill the person about to go off, whilst you can't be touched, so they have no incentive to think about dealing with you. The person about to go off gets eliminated, and then the return order continues. The worst thing about this is trying to keep track of how the turn order works if you give someone in a multiplayer game an extra turn. So, turn order goes 1, 2, 3, 4. You say you're player 1. If you give, and it's your turn, you cast this. You give player 3 an extra turn. You finish your turn, player 3 takes a turn, then it will go back to player 2, whose turn it should have been after your turn. Does that make sense? Because people are going to go, it's your turn, you cast this, you give it the extra turn to player 3 takes their turn, and then you just continue to turn 4. That is not correct. Steel Burr Champion. 2 and a white for a 1/1 mouse soldier with offspring for 1 and a white. Vigilance. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So, 3 mana 1/1 with Vigilance. Your opponents cast non-creatures. This is not Mana Gorge or Hydra. It does not care about your spell casting. It does not care about your opponent's creature casting. But, still potentially going to be quite big. And if you cast it later, you can have 2 of them. And then they're vigilant, which makes them excellent offensively and defensively. This is not an amazing card, but it is a strong role player. Overlook it at your peril. Tempt with bunnies! 2 and a white sorcery. This is a tempting offer that I think is going to be one of the most likely for everyone to accept. This goes much softer than some of the other tempts. Draw a card, make a rabbit. Then each opponent may draw a card and make a rabbit. For each opponent who does, you draw a card and make a rabbit. So, you play this. 3 mana, draw a card, make a 1/1. Not great, but just about passable with the current state of Magic. Then, any number of your opponents may decide that they also want in on this card draw and little babies. And every one of them gives you more card draw and more little babies. Good politics, reasonable rate. If you get paid off, like if anyone takes it, you've drawn 2 cards and made 2 bodies for 3 mana. If this is in your deck, you're going to be taking more advantage of it than your opponents anyway. Enjoy rabbit punching everyone. Fortune Teller's Talent. Single blue for an enchantment class. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. This is a very medium effect. At 3 and a blue, you can go to level 2. As long as you've cast a spell this turn, you may play cards from the top of your library. This is a much more reasonable effect, but much worse than the normal future sights, because you have to have something in your hand that you have played first before you can start clearing the top of your deck. For 3 and a blue, spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 2 less to cast. So that includes the ones off your library, but also anything that you're casting from exile, or other graveyard, other shenanigans. This only really starts paying off if you've got to level 3, and it's very expensive to get there. If you can, then this is incredibly powerful, but getting there is going to take a long time and a lot of resources, and probably isn't going to be worth it. So that's what? 5 and 3 blue over a series of turns. If you're in a really slow game or slow meta, this might be okay, but I think it's pretty risky to invest that much mana, especially if anyone's likely to blow it up. If you want card advantage, then maybe you should consider Pollywog Prodigy. 1 and a blue for a 1/3 frog wizard with it evolve when a creature enters. When a creature you control enters, if that creature has greater power or toughness than this creature, put a +1/+1 counter on this. And whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell with mana value less than Pollywog Prodigy's power, draw a card. So, you play this. If your opponent tries to play any 0-drops, you could draw a card. You put some counters on this. Now you play a bigger creature, this evolves. Now if your opponents play 1-drops, you draw a card. You do some shenanigans and you put 5 counters on this. So that's an easy way to process it, I guess, is if an opponent casts a non-creature spell with mana value equal or less than the number of counters on this, draw a card. I think this is going to draw a lot of cards in the right deck. Here's a very silly little frog. Check out that great hat. This is not quite Mystic Study or Mystic Remora, but those cards are absurd, and I think this can be considered along with those. It is certainly that sort of concept. 20-toed toad. 3 and a blue for a 3/3 frog wizard. Your maximum hand size is 20. Whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on 20-toed toad and draw a card. Whenever 20-toed toad attacks, you win the game if there are 20 or more counters on it, or you have 20 or more cards in hand. So, massive increase to hand size, very rarely going to be relevant, but enjoy it if it comes up. Attack with 2 or more creatures, put a counter on this and draw a card. This does not have to be attacking, but can. And then, when this attacks, you instantly win the game if you have 20 counters on it, or 20 or more cards in hand. Ooh. Important to note, do not have to be +1/+1 counters. So if you're doing other counters with shenanigans, it will just count the total number of counters, not the total number of +1/+1s. This is a very silly little frog. If you see it, you should probably kill it before your opponent wins the game with it, because if they're playing this, they are almost certainly going to do something degenerate and win the game with it. I can't remember what her name is. She is mono blue. Azami? Azami. People are going to play this in Azami. People are going to instantly win the game because, well, you play 20-toed toad, you play Azami, tapping your wizards draws you cards. Come on, you can see that. I don't need to explain this to you, right? You can see how this works. Anyway. Let's get away from it. Hazel's Brewmaster. 3 and a black for a 3/4 squirrel warlock with menace. Whenever it enters or attacks, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard and create a food token. It did zoom out. Hazel's Brewmaster, 3 and a black, squirrel warlock, 3/4 menace. When it enters or attacks, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard and create a food token. Foods you control have all activated abilities of all creatures exiled with Hazel's Brewmaster. So, graveyard hate and food generation and shenanigans off of activated abilities from exiled things. The most obvious busted thing to do with this is everyone's favorite right. Zoom out a bit so we can see Devoted Druid. Right, Devoted Druid. It enters turn 2. Turn 3, you've tapped Devoted Druid to make a mana. You cast Hazel to ramp up to Hazel's Brewmaster. Then you put 2 -1/-1 counters on Devoted Druid while Hazel's Brewmaster is on the stack. Devoted Druid goes into your graveyard. Hazel's Brewmaster enters, exiles Devoted Druid, and turns it into a food. Foods you control have all activated abilities, but the food is not a creature. So now you can tap your food for green, because it's not summoning sick, because it's not a creature. Put a -1/-1 counter on your food. Does nothing, because your food is not a creature. You have infinite mana! Yay! Bored now. But, yeah. Like, if you want to do your own degenerate combo things, congratulations. Hazel's Brewmaster is yet another way to go infinite with Devoted Druid. Aren't we all excited? Isn't this strange and new? No one has ever gone infinite with Devoted Druid before. This was sarcasm. But It's just, hey, honestly, it's just an incredibly fair little squirrel. If you're not, what the heck? What did I just do? Right. Brewmaster is just a very fair little squirrel, hating out graveyards and giving you a little bit of value from the foods and activated abilities. Having to, like, you can target your graveyard, you can target your opponent's graveyards. Just go for whatever's good. Don't get overly tempted by trying to hit things with activated abilities. You're playing, this is your graveyard hate, hit the things that need hating out first, and then shenanigans later. Insatiable Frugivore. It's a 3 and a black for a Rat Berserker. It's a 2/4. When it enters, create a food. Then you may exile 3 cards from your graveyard. If you do, repeat this process. So, make a food, and then exile any number of multiples of 3 cards from your graveyard. Make that many foods. 3 and a black, X, sacrifice X foods. Creatures you control get +X/+0 and gain menace until end of turn. If you're playing a new food deck with black in it, congratulations, here's your new win condition. Enjoy murdering people with this slightly psychotic rat eating a strawberry. If for some reason you want to do shenanigans involving exiling your graveyard, then I guess go off like that as well, but he's just a dude who gives you a pile of food and then gives you a way to win the game with that pile of food. If you're playing a food deck, then do it. If you're not playing a food deck, he doesn't really help you. Moonstone Eulogist. 3 black for a 4/4 Bat Warlock with flying. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, make a blood token. Whenever you sacrifice an artifact, any of them, put a +1/+1 counter on this and gain a life. So, your creature dies, opponent's creature dies, they give you blood. Any artifacts you control go away. This gets bigger and incrementally gains you life. The complete lack of protection on him is slightly disconcerting, but those abilities are both quite powerful. Swarmyard Massacre. I cast my opponent's one of these in a Commander game yesterday. It was kinda silly. Why do you think I'm closing the stream? What? Did I say I was about to finish? I'm very confused by it. Anyway, Swarmyard Massacre. 3 black, sorcery. Make 2 1/1 squirrels. Then, each creature that isn't an insect, rat, squirrel, or spider, or squirrel gets -1/-1 until end of turn for each creature you control that is an insect, rat, spider, or squirrel. So, at minimum, 5 mana, 2/2. You are not seeing the entirety of the screen. I've still got quite a, I'm in black, we've still got red and green and multicolor. And artifact. And land. And this page, chill. Oh, just throwing me off. Where was I? Swarmyard Massacre. 3 black, sorcerer. Yes. So, worst, 5 mana, make 2 1/1s, everything else gets -2/-2. That's not amazing, but you're playing this in a rat or squirrel or insect or spider or all of the above deck. So you play this, you make a couple of extra bodies, and then you kill everything. Or you just play this in Maha because you play this, then you play Maha, then you play this, and then everything dies anyway. But that's much more boring. Don't be boring. Do exciting things. Play Insect Tribal Kindred. Insect Kindred. Kindred board wipes are always entertaining. This is a very good one if you are in the correct Kindreds. Next 20. Agate Instigator. 1 and a red for a 1/3 Lizard Rogue with Offspring for another 1 and a red. Whenever another creature you control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. So, it's impact tremors on a body, or 2 impact tremors across 2 body. Would you play Impact Tremors? Would you play Perforos? You would play Agate Instigator. Alchemist's Talent. 3 and a red, when it enchantment class. When it enters, create 2 tapped treasure tokens. 1 and a red for level 2. Treasures you control have sacrifice this artifact, add 2 mana of any one color. 4 and a red, level 3. Whenever you cast a spell, if mana from a treasure was spent to cast it, this class deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to each opponent. If you are doing treasure things, this is one of the best treasure cards we have seen in a long time. Yes, it's expensive to get all the way to the top, but you're playing a treasures deck. You have 300 mana already. You don't care. My wife has a very nasty red-blue Feywild Ganax Dragons deck that is built around treasure nonsense. This is going in there. This is going to kill us constantly. You play this. Next turn, you pay, tap 2 lands, you go to level 2. Your treasures now produce the mana to make up for the lands you've just tapped, so you're already neutral. You can very easily, I think, so you play this on 4. You play a land. You now have 5 lands with 2 treasures. You tap 2, you have 3 lands with 2 treasures. Yeah, so you can get all the way to the top of level 3 the turn after you play this easily. That's ridiculous. Calamity of Cinders. 5 red sorcery, Convoke, deal 6 damage to each untapped creature. This is a really neat card design. You tap all your creatures, and then you deal 6 damage to each untapped creature. Very good in board stalls. If your opponents are being aggressive, this becomes much worse, but it's still a quite spicy card, and honestly, a board wipe that you can cast without paying any mana, tapping any mana for it, is ridiculous. Hey, if your opponent's playing red, be careful about when you leave your creatures untapped. This could come at you. Echoing Assault. 4 and a red enchantment. Creature tokens you control have menace. Whenever you attack a player, choose target non-token creature that is attacking that player. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 1/1. The token enters tapped and attacking that player. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So, your creature tokens will have menace. That's 5 mana is expensive for that, but it's quite a strong effect in a go-wide deck. When you attack a player, when you attack a player, sorry, what did I just? There we go. When you attack a player, create a token of a creature that's attacking it. A creature that you make for a creature attacking it, you make a copy that is also attacking that player. I believe that means if you attack multiple players, you can choose a creature for each player you are attacking, and then you get a copy of it, which then goes away at the next end step. And those copies, because they're tokens, will have menace. So if you've got a lot of powerful ETBs, great. If you've got a pile of powerful combat damage triggers, you've got pretty good odds with this. I had missed that you can get multiple if you're attacking multiple people. I have to reevaluate whether I want this in any of my decks. I probably do. Interesting. Very weird card. Prosperous Bandit. 2 and a red for a 2/2 Raccoon Rogue. It has Offspring for 1 and First Strike. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, create that many tapped treasure tokens. So, downside, it's a 3 mana 2/2, so actually getting to hit someone with it is going to be a challenge. Upside, First Strike makes it a bit easier to attack with, and if you hit someone, you can make quite a lot. If you're playing this in a deck where you can easily make it bigger or evasive, like put equipment or counters on it, this card can get out of hand quite fast. Look at him, he's just a little dude, and comes with an even littler dude, and yet somehow rolling in gold. Don't get too caught up in that last effect. The last effect is incredibly powerful, but if you don't have a way to reliably hit someone with him, that is not worth including. Keep clicking the wrong places. Fire Swipe Hawk. 3 red for a 4/4 elemental bird with flying and haste. Whenever it attacks, it gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is the greatest mana value among artifacts you control. Whenever you expend 6, that is, spend 6 mana on spells, gain control of up to 1 target artifact for as long as you control Fire Swipe Hawk. So you play this, you attack. You get maybe +2 from some random mana rock you've got lying around. Next turn, you play a 6-drop. You steal the best artifact on the battlefield. You attack, this gets +X, where X is that artifact's mana value. This is going... Honestly, I'm not sure whether the fact that you have a very large flying attacker or you're regularly stealing the best artifact in play is the most exciting thing about this card. If you can reliably expend 6, this card is going to annoy the heck out of your entire table. Enjoy yourselves. On the subject of annoying the heck out of your entire table, Bloodroot Apothecary. 2 and a green for a 3/3 Squirrel Druid with Toxic 2. Toxic being when this deals combat damage to a player, they get 2 poison counters. When this enters, you and target opponent each create a treasure token. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-creature token, that player gets 2 poison counters. This card terrifies me for certain decks I have, and is absolutely ridiculous. We have been wanting Wizards to print something to hate on the tokens and treasures and nonsense players for a while. Behold our saviour. You play this, your opponents have to be real cautious about how they use their treasures. Great card. Love things that make your opponents reconsider how they're playing the game. Brightcap Badger. 3 and a green for a 3/4 Badger Druid. With an adventure. Fungus Frolic is an instant speed adventure. For 2 and a green, create 2 1/1 green sapling creatures. And then, Brightcap Badger himself says, each fungus and sapling you control has tap, add green. And at the beginning of your end step, create a green sapling, 1/1 green sapling creature token. So, turn 3, you instant speed out 2 saplings. Turn 4, you play this. Then, you can instantly tap the saplings you made last turn to add additional mana. Then, at your end step, you make more saplings for more later mana. This is quite a big mana boost, especially if you're in a fungus or sapling deck, but even by himself, he has quite a lot of payoff. And worst comes to worst, he's a 4 mana 3/4 that makes your body every turn. Oh my God. Communal Brewing. 2 and a green for an enchantment. When it enters, any number of target opponents each draw a card. So, you draw a card, and you draw a card, and no, I don't want to give you a card. No card for you. Whenever you cast a creature spell, that creature enters with... Any number of target opponents each draw a card. Put an ingredient counter on Communal Brewing, then put an ingredient counter on it for each card drawn this way. So, it enters, you give up to X opponents cards, and you put X+1 ingredient counters on it. Then, whenever you cast a creature spell, that creature enters with X additional +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of ingredient counters on Communal Brewing. So if it's got 1 counter, everything enters with an extra +1/+1, which honestly, for a 3 mana enchantment, isn't terrible at all anyway. But if you want to go big, you can give each opponent a card. 4-player game, you give 3 opponents cards, You put 4 counters on this, the next creature you play has 4+1/+1 counters on it. Important note, it's casting creatures and they enter with. This doesn't affect your tokens. But still, if you're doing counter nonsense and proliferate nonsense, this is amazing. Evercoat Ursine. Ursine? 4 and a green for a 6/5 trample, which is already an excellent stat line. Hideaway 3, Hideaway 3. When this creature enters, look at the top 3 cards of your library, exile 1 face down, then put the rest on the bottom in a random order, then do it again. When Evercoat Ursine deals combat damage to a player, if there are cards exiled with it, you may play one of them without paying its mana cost. So, 5 mana 6/5 exiles 2 cards face down, and then each time it deals combat damage, you may cast one of them for free. That's a lot of value. I don't know, that's all I've got to say. It's a lot of value. Obviously. Do you like casting spells for free? Do you like 5 mana 6/5 tramplers? Hello. Do you want to just beat your opponents down and get value for doing it? Hello. This big old sleepy bear is going to do stuff. Gormon's Talent. Green, enchantment class. During your turn, artifacts you control are foods in addition to their other types and have 2 tap sacrifice this artifact, you gain 3 life. So all of your artifacts become food. 2 and a green, whenever you gain life for the first time each turn, make a 3/3 raccoon. And 3 and a green, whenever you gain life for the first time each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. If you're in green X life gain, like Trostani or Lathiel, or literally any of the wide range of nonsense, this card is... Level 1 isn't amazing, but levels 2 and 3 are both incredible. Have fun, do your nonsense. Is it each turn? And it's each turn, not just in your turn. So you can go gain life in my turn, make a thing, put counters on everything. Your turn, sack a food, in life, make a 3/3, put counters on everything. Your turn, sack a food. You get the idea. Great card to take over a mid to late game, if you have reliable life gain stuff. Rootcast Apprenticeship. 3 and a green, sorcery. Choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. Create a token that's a copy of target token you control. Target player creates a 1/1 green squirrel creature token. Target opponent sacrifices a non-token artifact. So, just a huge number of choices. It's worth noting that you can't make the squirrel and then copy it and then put counters on it, because you have to, 1, you have to target things, and 2, spells resolve from the top to the bottom. But 4 mana like sorcery, I think, is the biggest problem with this. But 4 mana sorcery, create 3 copies of target token you control, could be incredible in the right deck. Target opponent sacrifice a non-token artifact. If someone's got one really big problem, that's great. Distributing 6 counters in chunks of 2 isn't terrible. But I think the main thing you're going to want to do with this is that second mode, and just make 3 copies of some massive token you have. I think that is by far the highest upside on this card. Yeah. Scurry of squirrels. Look at his eyes. Look at the eye. Look at the nut. The nut right there, right in the front of the picture. 2 and a green. It's a 2/2 squirrel scout with Myriad. Whenever this creature attacks, for each opponent other than the defending player, you may create a token that's a copy of this creature that's tapped and attacking, and then exile them at the end. So, I attack you. For you and you, I make 2 copies of this that are coming at you. Whenever Scurry of Squirrels deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Bearing in mind that the tokens that you're making also are called Scurry of Squirrels, so have this effect, so if they get through to these players, then I get more counters to dish out. A 3-mana 2/2 with no evasion is awkward. Let us admit that. But you can, if anyone is open, you can just start spitting out legions of 2/2 squirrels to make life complicated, especially if you have other things you're attacking with. Thickest in the thicket. 3 green for an enchantment. When it enters, put X +1/+1 counters on target creature where X is that creature's power. At the beginning of the end step, draw 2 cards if you control the creature with the greatest power or tied for the greatest power. If you're going very big on one creature, this just goes really massive, and then just over the course of the game draws you cards as long as you can protect your giant monster. Honestly, this card feels extremely win more. You get the most value by targeting something that's already big, and then you continue to accumulate value as long as you have the biggest thing. If you like win more, great. If you would rather have some, but I think most of the time you're playing this, you're going to be ahead anyway, and this just helps keep you there. Trail Tracker Scout. 1 and a green for a 1/3 Raccoon Scout. Tap, add 1 mana of any colour. Whenever you expend 8, return up to 1 target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So, it's a 2-mana mana dork that any turn you spend 8 mana on spells lets you get another card back from your graveyard. That's a remarkable amount of value for the late game. That is a very interesting little raccoon. Just like you play this. Later in the game, you expend 8, you pick up a 7-drop from your graveyard. You just hold on to it until you have one other spell you cast both of them, you've expended 8, you pick up another giant spell from your graveyard. Very great card if you're playing go big strategies. Multicolor. Here we go. 2 green, blue. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal it if it's a land card. Create a 1/1 blue fish creature token if you revealed it this way, and draw a card. So, reveal the top. If it's a land, you get a fish, and then whatever it is, you draw that card. Go to level 2 for an extra green and a blue. Instead of making a 1/1 fish, you make a 3/3 shark. And then go to level 3 for an extra 2 and a green and a blue. Instead of making a shark, you make an 8/8 octopus. So now, if you get this all the way to level 3, you reveal the top card of your library in your upkeep. If it's a land, you make an 8/8 and then put the land in your hand, and then you draw your card for the turn. If you want a semi-reliable engine for pooping out monsters, Fish's Talent is surprisingly good. Also, can we appreciate the concept? So this is about how good you are at fishing. And a level 3 fisher can reliably pull octopuses out of the local pond. Come on, that's hilarious, right? Just hang down here by the stream. Oh, just minding my own business. Just yanks the kraken out of the village pond. Yep. Bit smaller than my usual. Oh well. Oh, another one. While we're on the subject of 8/8 octopods, Octomancer. So this is who's been filling the local pond. 3 green blue for a 3/3 frog druid. Gift an octopus, which is an 8/8 blue octopus creature token if this spell resolves after you promise a gift. At the beginning of each end step, create a token that's a copy of target creature token that enters the battlefield this turn. So, your turn, you gift this. You promise the gift, you play this. They get an 8/8, end of turn, you get an 8/8. That player's turn, they made some treasures. Cool, you get a treasure. That player's turn. They're doing some real nonsense. They're playing Rapid Rabbit. Great. You make a copy of one of the legends that they just shenaniganed. If you enjoy playing decks that do stuff based on what your opponents are doing, this frog is a great little friend for and inclusion for that. Also a great political tool, because an 8/8 octopus is a real significant gift to make an offer to someone with. Rapid Augmentor. 1 blue-red for an Otter Artificer. It's a 1/3 with haste. Whenever another creature you control with base power 1 enters, it gains haste until end of turn. Whenever another creature you control enters, if it wasn't cast, put a +1/+1 counter on Rapid Augmenter, and Rapid Augmenter can't be blocked this turn. So, this really what this is calling for you to do is with stuff like Thopters. So you make 2 Thopters, they get haste. You created them, you didn't cast them, so you get 2 counters on this and it can't be blocked. But this just wants you to do blue-red tiny tokens. And then this gets huge, unblockable, and kills people. But quite a cool design, really interesting build around. Kind of sad he's not legendary, really. This would be a really scary commander. But great in lots of places. Look, this card is just... I can't not laugh when I see this card. It's just... I mean, look at it. Look at all of the little hamsters crushed into that giant ball. Rolling Hamsphere. It's a 7-mana 4/4 artifact vehicle. It gets +1/+1 for each hamster you control. Whenever it attacks, create 3 hamsters, and then deal X damage to any target for X number of hamsters you control. So, you play it. You crew 3, you attack with it. It's now a 7/7. You have 3 bodies sitting back in defense, and you deal 3 damage to something. Next turn, you tap your hamsters to crew it, you attack with this. You make 3 more hamsters. This is now a 10/10, and you deal 6 damage to something. And it just keeps snowballing. Rolling Hamsphere, Katamari Damacy to the moon. Go big, go smash. This is, I think, often going to be better than mere Battlesphere. Ah, what hacks is this? Pretending to be me? Sword of the Squeak! 2-mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each creature you control with base power or toughness 1. So play this in your decks with loads of little dudes. Whenever a hamster, mouse, rat, or squirrel you control enters, you may attach Sword of the Squeak to that creature. Rats and squirrel decks both churn out large numbers of 1/1s, so we can see the clear synergy there, and equip for 2. This is going straight into my Krenko King Street Pin Street Kingpin deck. I churn out huge numbers of 1/1s there, and then he will get enormous, and that will let me churn out even more 1/1s. In the right, if you're playing against someone with a load of small creatures and they play this, they're going to hurt you badly. Okay, that's it. We're done. That was all of them. We're back to... Hey! Okay. Let's go to chatting while we wait for Commentary Wife to catch up, because she apparently desperately wanted to say something to me when I reached the end. Let's stop this machine then. Okay, that'll do then. Well, by far my longest stream. Ow, my feet are sore. Farewell. What am I doing? I was in the middle of trying to do something sane. That's what I was trying to do. Right. What am I doing? Ending this stream. Okay. Bye.